well, and to keep track of that and keep those in accountants, we have with us the Minister for Romanians abroad. She used to be a former ambassador to many countries. Andreea Păstîrnac, ladies and gentlemen, is here. And last but not least, very fitting for this topic, of course, we have the head of the representation of the European Commission in Romania with us. Angela Christa is here with us, ladies and gentlemen. Hi. Wonderful to have you all. I feel as if this is almost like a debate with two opposing sides, though it is not. I hope that the distance, the physical distance, does not translate into one in terms of content, ladies and gentlemen. Now, Europe looking ahead and beyond the next 2 years, that is what we are going to focus on with the many challenges that Europe, our continent, is facing these days. And let me start with you, Minister. You know Europe inside out. You were a member of the European Parliament. Now, obviously, you are the Minister for European Affairs. From Romania, if you're looking from where we are, from Bucharest, from Romania, towards Europe, towards the state of Europe, what is the picture like? What is the picture like for you? Is it a optimistic view that you're seeing looking ahead? Give us a view, your personal and the Romanian view, as far as the EU is concerned.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you for the question, and I'm really happy to be here at the Bucharest Forum, and I would like to thank the organizers for having such an important event here in Romania. It's actually the most important one they are organizing in this part of Europe, and it's a great opportunity to discuss about Europe, but also to discuss about Romania's place in the world and in Europe. And indeed, of course, I'm not going to say anything especially new about it, about the fact that currently European Union is trying to find a new way, a new identity, a new path, and there are different proposals already on the table. There are some differences, and at the same time some similarities between the different proposals that are currently debated at European Union level. We have, first of all, of course, the speech of President Juncker that referred, of course, in his speech on the State of the Union to this idea that we need a more united Europe, a more democratic Europe. A Europe, of course, that needs, of course, to find the resources for its future within its members, to discuss more with the members and breathe with both lungs. Actually, this is a call actually to unity, a call to unity to which Romania answers in a positive way, because Romania believes the same way that indeed Europe needs to be united, and of course we need to all work together in building the future of Europe. And the fact that in his speech he mentioned several times Romania, it's a positive note for us. He referred to Romania directly 5 times and indirectly about 7 or 8 times, which makes Romania the most mentioned country in his speech. So of course we are rather positive towards his messages and towards this idea that in Sibiu, in the summit that we are going to have in 2019, we are going to debate about the future of Europe, and not only about that. Of course, we still need to convince some member states about the topic, but it's important for us to have such a so important summit in our country. In the same time, we have another proposal, the proposal of President Macron, that comes up with very innovative and positive ideas that, of course, we take into consideration, especially because he speaks very frankly about this idea of convention. It's something to which Romania reacts in a positive way, because we also believe that we need to involve more our citizens. We need to involve them in this process, involve the civil society, involve the political parties across Europe in debating about what we want for Europe in the future. Because it's a fact, you know, after already 60 years, people are still wondering or asking themselves, what will be the future of the current European Union? And we need to ask them what they expect to come out of Europe. And indeed, there are some positive proposals. And the fact that he, as a leader, comes up with a positive view on the European Union is something to which, again, we perceive as being something quite positive. But in the same time, there are different discussions about building a consensus. And this was announced in different discussions in the European Council by President Tusk. President Tusk believes, and we support him in this direction, that we can build a broad consensus regarding the future of Europe. And this is, again, a message to which Romania supports. So we have different debates, different proposals, some differences, some similarities, but Romania's main message about this is that we want to build bridges between East and West, between North and South, between developed and less developed countries and regions, because unity is essential for the future of Europe. We fought, and let's be very frank, so much to get in the European Union that we want this European Union to continue at least as it is, and to continue to advance in a positive way. And this is where I think we can bring a positive note, also during our activities at European level, but also in the upcoming presidency of the European Union Council that we are going to have in 2019.
We want to be a bridge between East and West, says Minister Negrescu. I think a message that Mr. Păstîrnac would undoubtedly echo. Then again, let me also ask you, how do you want to play this role? How does Romania intend to be this bridge between Eastern and Western European nations at times of so many despair and challenges here on this continent?
Being today Minister for Romanians living abroad, for Romanians living in Europe, I would like to start by mentioning one of the answers we received in our consular departments 10 years ago when our citizens told us we are no Europeans. I remember this definition as a very important turning point. Today we have probably 4 million Romanians living and working in European Union. And they are asking themselves every day all those theoretical questions about country of origin, about residency, questions related to their identity. And we should answer it from both theoretical point of view, but we should find a practical and pragmatical answer. We have today an important number of Romanians living in the UK, and together with them we should find a pragmatical answer of everyday life aspects. And as ministries of foreign affairs, but of Romanians living abroad, we should address their everyday life, both from political and theoretical point of view, and we start by sending to the parliament a kind of codex diaspora, a new package of legislation, but in the same time we should find with them everyday answers related to their identity. They should continue to learn and to speak and to address Romanian. They are Romanian, Europeans, Italian, Spanish. In Spain, in the next year, we'll have an important number of students with Romanian roots. They will be in less than 5 years new members of European market. They will be very active in the European active with a new identity. And we should find a lot of answers related to the mobility within European Union. And we are trying as government to bring them back. But bringing them back, it's not related to the original identity. Students or people who will come back later on, they will bring a new identity, Romanian, European, in the same time. And I think that we should find the answer to all these challenging questions.
Indeed. So hopes associated with the many millions of Romanians living abroad that one day they come back and, if you will, add and bring their knowledge and the cultural diversity and richness back to their home country, which bring me to the question, Angela, Christa, in Europe, because we heard from Mr. Negrescu, Romania is a proud member of the European Union. Now, we should be honest, and it's no secret that some countries that were under former Soviet rule, if you will, and are now part of the European Union, we've been seeing some populist discourse and illiberal tendencies in those countries, even to the point where a country like Poland openly thinks about perhaps leaving the EU at some point. Now, those tendencies cannot be seen here in Romania. It's quite the contrary. Why do you think that is? What makes the Romanian model different than in those countries?
What I notice, Ali, is that you are asking the Romanian minister to comment on Europe and the European representatives to comment on Romania, so you are putting pressure on us.
That's my job, yes.
Yes, you are doing a very good job.
There you go.
Now, what does make Romania different in this respect? Difficult to say. Maybe it is linked to the fact that Romanians believe in Europe more than other European citizens. That historically speaking, support for the European Union was always amongst the highest in Romania compared to other member states. It's also related to the fact that many Romanians look up to Brussels to find a solution to their problems or to their aspirations. And this is both good and not so good, because, of course, quite often the answer is rather in Bucharest or even in different regions and counties of Romania rather than in Brussels, because we have a very clear division of labor where the mandate of legislation is with the European Commission and where it is with the member states. And if we have member states in which people are rather reluctant to take instructions or legislation from Brussels, this is not the case. Not the case in Romania. But if you allow me, I would like to bridge a little bit to what the previous speakers said. And Minister Negrescu said that Romania wants to be a builder of bridges. And I dare say, dear Minister, that Romania is already such a builder of bridges in Europe. If we take into account only the millions of Romanians that are living and working abroad, and that did a lot to improve the awareness of other European citizens about Romania, or the fact that Romanians are, as I said before, amongst the most vibrant supporters of further European integration. What is new now with the speech on the State of the Union of President Juncker is that this is recognized publicly at the highest level in the European Commission. I think the time has come for this recognition. Moreover, President Juncker, if you want, pushed a little bit further. It was a friendly push towards Romania to be even closer, if not in, the core group of countries in the European Union, because we do believe that Romania is capable of doing so. And President Juncker gave several clear benchmarks. He asked for the immediate accession to the Schengen area, because Romania is already prepared. There is no question about this. And this was a message, if you want, less for Romania, which knows very well that it is prepared, and more for the member states that are still reluctant to allow Romania to join the Schengen area. The second benchmark is accession to the Eurozone. There is no doubt about the fact that the core Europe is built around the euro. There is no doubt that most integrative and integrational policies are elaborated around this zone. So if Romania wants to be part of the core Europe, and it does want, again, historically so, then accession to the euro is clearly on the agenda. Now, we know that now Romania is not ready. We know that it is not easy, and that's why we also came up with an offer to design a special convergence instrument, pre-accession if you want, or accession, euro accession instrument that we put at the disposal of Romania, both in terms of technical expertise, but also funding, so that this preparation is done hand in hand. So we want to clearly give the message to Romania that we want Romania in core Europe. We believe Romania is able to join core Europe, and we are going to do everything in our mandate to have it.
Mm-hmm. Minister Negrescu, let's take the long-term view here, if you will. It's no secret that both, you mentioned the monetary union, that the euro crisis, the refugee crisis, of course, all of those, the Brexit, all of those have exposed, if you will, deficiencies, structural deficiencies, have created bad blood amongst member states, even so much to the point that some people are doubting that the EU has a vibrant future ahead of itself. Now, you spoke so passionately about Romanians' contribution to the EU. Knowing the institution, knowing the EU, knowing the thinking in Brussels, give us your sense, give us a prediction. What makes you optimistic about the future of Europe?
Yeah, I will refer basically to something else when I explain to you why I'm so optimistic. Because independently of the meetings, we meet with people. And I meet with people from across Europe, and I see when discussing with them that they are optimistic about Europe, and they see why Europe is useful. I think we need to engage more with the citizens in order to find that out and stay less in the meeting rooms where we speak and not listen enough to each other, and start engaging more with the citizens to find solutions for the future of Europe. I think when the European Union was created at the beginning, no one was afraid of what people may think about building this common union. They simply had a vision. I think today we need a vision about Europe, and I think it's not the easiest thing to do today because we have to accommodate 27 different visions. It's not an easy task. This is our purpose as Ministers for European Affairs, the head of states, their purpose as well, is to try to build this consensus, to try to find this common identity within the 27 visions about the future of Europe. It's not an easy task. I think in this regard, Romania maybe has something to add to this vision, and also some particularities. The fact that we have 3 million citizens living, Romanians living in different member states, shows that Romania is actually a European country. I consider myself as being, especially because I'm young, but not only because of that, a true European. I lived for 9 years abroad. So I came back. My entire life is linked to the Europe as it is now, to the capacity to move from one country to another, to have rights in different countries, to have different freedoms. This is a very important thing. And of course, if we speak about the future of Europe, it's very important to leave the doors open to everyone. So like for Schengen, because it wasn't me who mentioned it, Schengen, we respect the rules, we respect the criteria, we have to get in, because we respect everything that was requested to us. With regards to Euro integration, Romania, I can tell you already, we have reactivated our groups, our working groups on this topic, in order to prepare and come up with a plan for the integration in the Eurozone. Romania wants to be part of the core Europe. It doesn't mean it will be easy. It doesn't mean it will be not difficult for us to do some reforms, but we are ready to do those reforms because Romania knows its path towards Europe. And in this regard, it's important to enter in contact and discuss, and I think the current presidency, because I see my friend Mati from Estonia here as well, the current presidency, the future presidency of the European Council really play a role in building this large consensus, in building this future vision of the European Union. Of course, we are mediators. We have to listen to everyone. We have to build a consensus. But I think the presidencies can play a role, especially if they manage to do this role of mediating. If we manage to mediate, we can reach a consensus. And I can tell you already, not only because he's here, the Estonians already do a great job in this regard, and it will be a good first step and a good example for us and for the upcoming presidency. And I'm sure Liliana, I don't know if she's here already, the Minister for the Presidency, the Bulgarian Minister for the Presidency, she will tell you the same thing, that we are working towards this building, this future vision of the European Union.
And Mathematikas, whom you mentioned, of course, will be in the subsequent discussion now, and then can take up your comment and remarks. I'm going to take your questions in just a moment. Before we wrap up, though, Ms. Păstîrnac, again about the Romanians abroad. I think that this is obviously the issue that you are working on a daily basis. It's an important one. How do you spoke about the need or the wish, the desire for them to come back at some point and contribute to the advancement of this country, of Romania. How realistic is that, though? What kind of incentives can you offer to the millions of Romanians abroad to come and contribute their knowledge here on the ground?
Actually, we start this summer a campaign to inform them more about their rights and to inform them more on our programs and incentives to come back and to settle down back in Romania. But in the same time, it's very important when we are discussing with our citizens who are living abroad, we are not seeing the original point of departure and the resident country as opposites. They are living together at the origin, at the residence point, because they are still linked to the original community. They are sending funds home. Part of the family is still home. They are building houses home. They are contributing to the growth home. They are seeing the departure point as part of their life. They are dreaming about the moment of coming back home, but in different ways and in a very personal way. Part of them are thinking about integration, and they have already families and still looking at their European careers as part of different destination. We have Romanians who left an European member state for another one, living in another one, and they are trying to contribute to the European growth, and they are seeing Romania as part of this process. In the same time, we are trying, and Victor mentioned this, we are trying to inform them more about their rights in different countries in Europe. Sometimes they are thinking that Europe, it's an even space with even rights and an even context. They are thinking that if they integrate themselves very well in Italy and they will move in UK, it will be a similar integration path. And this is not the case all the time. And we are trying also to support them on this way, and also to give them more and more information on our daily context of Romania, and trying to attract them to come back.
Yeah, important work, obviously, and a challenge for this country, particularly with regards in the long view. But before I take some questions, Ms. Christoph, briefly, if you can let's talk about the EU's and particularly obviously the EC's expectations of Romania. If you look at this country and how it has developed and what it contributes to the European Union, even as of today, where would you say, having Minister Negrescu right next to you, what kind of advice would you give him as far as, where's still space for improvement?
You know, we are very careful to be giving advices because you never know how they are taken.
Publicly.
And exactly, and unsolicited advice is sometimes not very much appreciated. Now, seriously, we are exactly as the minister said, we are in constant contact with our Romanian counterparts, and everything we do together. And even when we disagree, we agree to disagree. We disagree in agreement. For example, we very much welcome the very impressive economic growth of Romania. But we do have some concerns regarding the sustainability of this growth. Now, our Romanian partners are reassuring us this is sustainable. And time will tell, and I hope they are right and we are wrong. Another field in which we are working very much together is the fight against corruption, the independence of justice, the rule of law. Here, again, we are very impressed with Romania's track record, and we've been saying this repeatedly in our CVM reports. But of course, we are not yet at the end of the process of this CVM. On the other hand, we have a joint objective to lift this mechanism as soon as the 12 pending recommendations are met, and as soon as we receive further reassurance that there will be no stepping back on this.
All right, thank you so much for that overview. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I know that Minister Negrescu as well as Ms. Păstîrnac, you have to leave for a cabinet meeting pretty soon, but I do want to take advantage of your presence here and obviously give the audience an opportunity to address you as well with some questions before we bid you farewell. I know we have microphones here in the room. Go ahead, please. Microphone is coming to you. It's a bit of a traffic jam like on the way when I came over here today. Go ahead.
My comment is very brief. My name is Wojciech Garwal. I'm from the Polish Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I just wanted to make a small correction because you said that some Poles are thinking about leaving the EU, but that's not the case. No serious politician in Poland is talking about, and definitely not the government. And in fact, Poland, the level of support for the EU in Poland is one among the highest in Europe, like probably similar to Romania. So the government is very concerned about the future of the EU, and I think is looking at what happened with Brexit and is trying to be realistic about the undergoing currents and trying to stop further Brexits. And so we see ourselves as very much pro-European, but realistic in our assessment. So we are not talking at all about Polexit, or just a small correction.
Go ahead, please. You can pass on the mic to the young gentleman. Go ahead.
Again, Muzaffer Şener. I'm sure that you will report but I mean, my question is relating with how do you see the returning back to the main discussions on center and the periphery discussions, how do you see that the role and the position of the European Commission or the European institution, that the challenges coming from the periphery, especially in these regards for the Romania, that the Moldova and their Moldovan Ukrainian positions as an economic, I mean, despite the fact that the GDP growth in Romania is rising 2 times with the last 5 years, still it's then the economic periphery of Europe on the one side. Politically in the European Union, but the neighboring countries like Moldova, Ukraine, and all others are including Turkey as the politically periphery. The relations with those countries in terms of the liberalization in these countries, that support of the European support to the liberalization in those countries is very weak when we compare with the past, which is mostly relating with the rise of Euroscepticism in the Western European countries and deteriorating the relations with those countries, including Turkey. And for example, in Turkey, Moldova, and Ukraine, to support to the EU accession processes or EU policies is growing down and down. And now my question is regarding to that. The EU leaders deteriorating its relations specifically with Turkey, we will see that in Brexit, France, Netherlands, lastly Germany and Austria, Turkey like a scapegoat of European leaders, which is not helps to the European idea as well.
All right, I think that
how do you see that, how do you evaluate these developments? Europe is going to be more illiberal liberal, or will keep the line of being a liberal?
All right.
To all, not their own self.
Got it. Point well taken. I think that question is addressed to Ms. Krista. Are there any more questions so I can combine them and then throw it back for one last time to the audience? Go ahead, please. We have two gentlemen here in the first row. Am I missing some on that side, of course, as well?
Thanks. I'm Lazar Comanescu, former foreign minister and former ambassador to the EU and Germany. And now I'm working as a senior advisor for foreign policy to the Romanian Chamber of Commerce and Industry. I have two comments, or if you so wish, questions as well.
Great.
One is related, the two of them are related to Romania's declared wish and objective to get as close as possible up to entering genuinely the core Europe. And that has to do with, in my opinion, at least two things. One is the euro. And here I would like to see what the opinion of Minister Negrescu is. I'm among those who consider that getting into the Eurozone the soonest possible would be for Romania the better. I know that there are people who say that this is not possible, and I fully agree with this. On the other hand, from contacts which I have had with the representatives of the Romanian business community, I see that there is a wish that Romania does everything which can be done so as to get to this objective as soon as possible. There are, I depicted also others, who do express reluctance, mainly for fear of getting into a much stronger rule-based échafaudage, if I may say so. As I said, I'm fully in favor of making every effort for Romania to get into the euro as soon as possible. Second, still on the core, is about PESCO. And here I do really see a great opportunity for Romania. And here there is one point which I want to make. And I have in mind something which was mentioned by President Macron in his speech to Sorbonne University. I think that we have to acknowledge, if we want to get and to advance into PESCO, and in generally into defense Europe, we have to acknowledge there has to be an appropriate correlation between national sovereignty and what President Macron was saying, European sovereignty. I want to hear that, the point of the view of the panelists on that as well.
Thank you so much. Let's take the last two questions. The gentleman, and then, of course, to my left.
I'm a GMF fellow. To my knowledge, Romania has got into the EU, which makes sense to think of in terms of the Brussels organizations to take care a bit of building bridges within the EU. When I got Mr. Negrescu comments about building bridges, I thought in terms of a bit of a wider Europe. So I look more at Romania as playing more into a bit of a, not sense of periphery architecture, but more in terms of, beyond this logic, in terms of expanding influence and gaining in terms of a pivotal role towards the wider Europe and not within the EU. So I would very much like to get your comments on it.
Thank you so much. I'm sure they will be addressed in just a moment. Last question to my left, young strategic leader, I believe.
Cristina Buzascu from the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, Department of External Relations. Thank you for a very interesting and insightful panel discussion. My question is, in the context of the multiple crises currently facing Europe, economic, social, in terms of the migrants crisis, also technological, and a crisis in terms of reconnecting with its citizens. My question is, what could the EU do to make a positive case for itself in front of its citizens to avoid future scenarios like Brexit and other similar sort of anti-EU, Eurosceptic movements? And secondly, could Romania take a leadership role in the region, in Central and Eastern Europe, among a wave of Euroscepticism to promote this positive image of the EU, especially in the context of the upcoming presidency of the EU Council? And can its diaspora also play a role here? Thank you.
Ms. Păstîrnac, I believe that's a question for you. We have a Romanian living in London. There you go. We got to work on getting her back. That's the mission. But before Mr. Negrescu, there were many questions addressed to you as well as to Ms. Christa. Why don't you get started and see this off?
Yeah, just a general view, picking up on the questions that have been addressed to me and my colleagues. About the role that Romania can play in the region, actually, and with regard also with the countries that are in the region and are not members of the European Union, Western Balkans, Republic of Moldova, Ukraine. Indeed, we understand that Romania really has a responsibility to speak about them, about their future cooperation with the European Union. We would like them to further advance in their integration in the European Union, but we also understand that in order for them to advance, they need to do some reforms, they need to comply with some rules, and they need to understand something that Romania is still understanding today, is that in this family, there are criteria, but there are also values. And this idea of values is quite an important thing. And we try to do that more and more, to speak about common European values that basically unite us in the European Union. And by doing so, I think we can explain also to the general public in those countries that indeed those reforms, those tough changes that they need to do are important for them in building a society that is that is democratic, but at the same time where their voices are heard. And I think we will not face a return of their population against the European Union. I don't perceive that. If we go to the Republic of Moldova, you see that in the last couple of months, things have changed. I mean, within the population, a positive note towards the European Union, but we have to make and to be very careful in what we do, especially if we refer today to the discussion about the allocation of financial resources to the Republic of Moldova. Do I allocate funds to governments or do I allocate funds to people? My personal note on this is that we allocate funds to people. So indeed, we have to have a broader discussion about that, but not forget about values. And if we refer to that, of course, for us, core Europe or not core Europe, we think the entire Europe should be a core Europe. And everyone should be available to participate fully at the development of the European Union based on common values, but also common criteria. The Eurozone, belonging to the Eurozone, it's an important factor. Romania always pursued this goal of integrating the Eurozone. But of course, we acknowledge the fact that we need to be prepared for the integration in the Eurozone. This is why I said that we restarted the mechanism existing at national level to prepare for this process of integrating the Eurozone. It will not be an easy task, but we want in this process not to lose sight on citizens when we do such an integration. They will be the ones that they will see the numbers and figures changing from lei to euro. They will be the one asking us whether or not the prices have increased or not. They will be the ones asking us if this was a good thing or was a bad thing. So we need to involve them in this process of reforms, and at the same time in involving them in making them sure that this idea and the steps that are going to be made in this direction are the right ones. Of course, the Eurozone is a mechanism to get in the core Europe, if we may call it like this, but also the security policies and defense policies are quite an important thing. Romania fully participates to all the European Union mechanisms in this regard, and we are fully engaging in participating at the European mechanisms. There are new opportunities appearing. We would like to see those opportunities available for everyone. So if we construct a fund in terms of security, we want to make sure that everyone benefits out of those funds, and indeed what we do with the funds will benefit the security of us all. But it's important to mention that Romania has a perspective, like many states, that a common European defense policy should go alongside and in clear partnership with NATO, which is a clear security structure that, of course, ensures the security of a lot of our countries, and especially in this part of Europe. And this is a perspective that we are promoting in this regard. So broadly, building bridges, yeah, we want to build bridges within the European Union, because today we need to build bridges in the European Union, but also with outside the European Union. But it's clearly that we don't believe there is a periphery. It depends on the perspective. Maybe here I'm too optimistic. I don't look at Romania as being in the east, as being at the periphery. Maybe not in the center immediately, but it's not about that, it's about the perspective through which you look. And we really believe that European Union is a whole. So we are all in the center. The idea, is this center efficient? Is this center working? Is this center uniting us? Is this center democratic enough? It's about making the center with everyone clearly useful and successful. And it's about that. So clearly here, we want to construct and promote this perspective.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for ending on an optimistic note. You're 32 years old, so if you're not going to be optimistic now, I don't know when. I think your youth is clearly a good indication for things to come in this country. Ms. Christa, you were addressed a couple of times, particularly the role of the EU.
Well, let me first start by saying I'm optimistic too, even if I am a little bit older than 32.
23.
23. Yes, there were excellent questions, all. I'm trying to briefly go through them. About the support of the Polish people for the European Union, it is true. It is a great support, and I think it is also directly linked to the EU funding that comes mainly through the cohesion policies. Because like Commissioner Crețu said, there is hardly any village, any commune, any town, any city in this part of Europe that has not benefited from the EU funds. So it comes naturally when you receive this type of solidarity, you give back your support to the EU project. The second intervention, I wonder if you are from Turkey.
Yes.
Türk müsün? Ha. Tamam.
But let's answer in English anyway.
Maybe afterwards I can practice my Turkish. You said that Turkey is a scapegoat. You feel that Turkey is a scapegoat in Europe. Well, join the club. We Europe. We are used to be the scapegoat for many things that go wrong. As far as the support for the EU in countries like Turkey is concerned, having lived and worked in Turkey for a number of years, what I noticed is that Turkish people are also very proud people. And part of their, let's say, vote against the EU was, if you don't want us, then we don't want you. So I'm not sure how deep, how true the fel of support for integration into the EU is, and whereas it's not more linked to the fact that their pride has been hurt. Now, will the EU go in an illiberal or liberal direction? For us, there is only one direction. As President Juncker said, the EU is not only an economic community. It might have started as an economic community, but is a community of values. Values such as freedoms, equality, rule of law. And all these are values linked to liberalism and not to the opposite direction. And if I go to the last question, what can EU do to make a positive case for itself? I take inspiration from across the Atlantic to answer this question. Maybe the time has come for citizens to ask themselves what they can do for Europe. I think Europe is doing quite a lot. And as First Vice President Timmermans said, he said, those who are against Europe are extremely well organized and vocal. Those who are in favor of Europe need to be as vocal if we are to make a case for the European Union.
So paraphrasing JFK, if you will, ask not what the EU can do for you, but what you can do for the EU. That's, well, we'll take that for the second discussion, which is following closely. But before we wrap this up, of course, Ms. Păstîrnac, let's get your remaining thoughts, and particularly the question from the young lady.
I think that Romanians living today in Europe, they are carrying on with them their enthusiastic confidence on European values. And I consider that they are the ambassadors of Europe in every community. They settle down. And actually, I'm joining Victor. It's not a peripheric and central approach. They are, in a way, more European in their new communities sometimes than the locals. And actually, they are engaged in a huge effort to be part of the European life there, and to be part of the administrative, to be elected in the new environment, and they are trying to be active as European, sometimes more than us home. And I think that this is our main contribution to Europe today. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is, of course, the Bucharest Forum, so it's only fitting that we kicked off the EU part of the discussion with a view from Romania. It's been indeed a fascinating, very educational discussion for many international panelists, I'm sure. So thank you so much. I know you have to rush off to a cabinet meeting. Good luck with that. Big round of applause for our panel. Thank you so much. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated because